Anybody wants to get into it, I don't discourage it.
Big hand for Angelo Dundee.
I tell them, man, you're in for a tough road to hoe. This is a tough business. You got to hustle, and you got to be special to be a fighter. Champion is a very special individual. Cut man, corner man, sweet man, no man, baloney. You're the trainer of the fighter. You're the guy.
Angelo was a master cornerman and a master motivator.
Angelo Dundee is what's good about boxing. You know, Angelo Dundee is a plus for the sport of boxing.
His way of working with people. He never tries to mold the guy. He tries to use the guy's talents. He always lets the fighter shine. He understands the fighter's the star, and he's in the background.
Angelo was the great, as far as I'm concerned, one of the greatest cornermen of all time.
Angelo's greatest strength and greatest weakness is the same. He loves his fighter, and he loves boxing.
The greatest upsets in the sport. Clay over Liston, Ali over Foreman, Leonard over Haggard. And in every situation, there in the corner was Angelo Dundee.
I think the first time he met Ali, he was with Willie Pastrana in Louisville.
I was in a Sheraton Hotel, minding my own business. Willie Pastrana had a fight on, and I get a call from the lobby from guy says, "Hey, I'm Cassius Marcellus Clay. I'm the Gold Glove champ of Louisville, Kentucky. I won the Golden Gloves in Seattle. I won the Golden Gloves in Chicago. And I'm going to be the next Olympic champion." So I held my hand to the phone. I said, "Willie is some kind of a nut downstairs who wants to talk to us." So, but Muhammad knew me. I had a lot of fighters. I had about 16 fighters. You know, I was working with Carmen, Louis, Willie Pastrana, Dupas. I said, "Look, I got a gym in Miami Beach. If you ever want to come down and train, come on." He said, "Man," he said, "everybody's offering me money, cars. All I can offer you is service."
It's the first time he's been in a big city, and we put him in this den of iniquity.
And he used to live in downtown ghetto. He used to live in the Liberty City area. And he lived right next to the famous chef. That's where he used to eat. The reason I made him eat there, because he used to sign the checks, and I would get the bills. I sort of handled the whole situation.
Yeah, SI called me up and said the writer has written a really good story. And so we need some pictures of this young boxer. And I really hadn't followed the Olympics that well, so I didn't even know who he was. And I got pictures of Ali running across the Julia Tuttle Causeway. And he used to run with army boots on.
And I used to get calls from the cops about a tall, skinny kid saying he was my fighter. I said, "Well, he is my fighter." And he was coming to the gym. He would run to the gym, work out, run back. That's the kind of kid he was. He wanted to be a fighter.
That boy is either crazy or he is going to be the next heavyweight champion of the world.
For this fight, I'm nervous. He's got my job. I'm the champ.
That's all he talked about. That's all he talked about. So he's going to be the champion. I'm going to be the champion.
Cassius Clay white T-shirts. And it was great. He had it printed on the front and the back. So, you know, wherever he went, he had this logo. And people did begin to know who he was.
Ali, of course, was a wonderful self-publicist, and he said for a long time that a lot of that came from watching a wrestler named Gorgeous George on television.
He said, you have to do something that is out of the ordinary so the press won't like it.
Cassius Clay was acting up and goofing around, and still you could see that there was something special there. He could fight and he could move well and like nobody else. And Angelo just sort of was there.
Muhammad Ali was a different kind of a teacher. You got to remember, this kid's been fighting since he was 12. This kid was a great amateur. This kid was the most sought-after fighter.
He was able to blend with Muhammad. Muhammad had a very strong personality. He liked to do things his way. he would never have lasted with a trainer who insisted on complete control.
Ali didn't take much choice, but he listened to Angelo.
My name's Angelo Dundee. My mother and father were Marina. They came from Calabria, Italy, and I'm an offspring of those two guys, and I'm the youngest of 5 brothers. I had 2 sisters also.
One of his brothers wanted to box, but the father didn't want them to be boxers at all. So he changed his name, and he took the name of an old fighter from the 1910s, I think, 20s, called Dundee. Just picked the name out of the hat, I think. He liked the fighter, and he took the name, and he became, I think it was Joe Dundee. And Angie, Chris took the name Dundee too, and they started using the name to keep the idea they were in the fight game, mainly away from their father.
I had a lot of street fights. In fact, my brother Jimmy was my matchmaker, because I was a little short, fat kid. They used to call me Porky and Tootsie, and I used to wind up getting, we used to make matches, and my brother Jimmy was the matchmaker.
Angelo Dundee had, you know, a legacy in his family of boxing. He had a brother whose name was Joe Dundee, who was a preliminary fighter around Philadelphia. Then he had Chris, of course, who was a well-known manager.
I was not a good fighter. I fought in the military, but I couldn't fight. I mean, you got to have talent to be a fighter. When I got out of high school, there was no dreams about me going into college because I was looking for a job. I was looking to bring the bread into the house. And I went through a variety of types of jobs, you know, shining shoes, blocking hats. And one of the greatest teachers was my brother Chris, because I lived in his office in New York City and listened to him. Great manager.
Chris advised him to go to New York and, you know, go to school there, so to speak, and learn the business, you know, in the school of hard knocks.
Dad started out as the bucket boy for my Uncle Chris, and he wanted to be in boxing. Dad wanted to be a fight guy, and what happened was he slept on the couch for years, learned his trade in New York from the bottom up.
He was a bucket boy for all Chris's fighters. Finally, he got one fighter, and I think he worked and made a little bit of money. And that's what he did. And he was lucky to get $10 or $15 a night.
So he hooked up with Stillman's gym.
Stillman's gym was the Valhalla of boxing. And I watched all these great trainers train their fighters. My teachings with Chicky Ferrara, Ray Arcel, Charlie Goldman, on and on. All the trainers in New York City, they were my teachers.
That's how Dad learned from the guys in Stillman's gym.
Walking around there either with a bucket or a towel, doing things for his brother.
I do a lot of homework on my individuals. I do a lot of studying on tapes of fighter styles. In the early days, there was no tapes. I used to use still pictures. And that's where I learned how to beat Liston, because Liston, I noticed he used to throw a jab, and he put all his weight on his left foot. And that's why we got lucky with that right hand over the top.
Learned his trade in New York from the bottom up, and paid his dues and moved down to Miami and picked up a few fighters and went from there.
I worked against him, and my guy outboxed him. So what I did, I went to the dress room and consoled him. I told him how bad I felt. He got licked, you know. And Carmen, those newspaper guys were saying, you ought to retire, you got bad hands, you're busted up, you got arthritis in your elbow. Carmen said, you guys are nuts. I'm going to be the champion of the world.
Well, I think Angelo was an expert cut man before Basilio, but he was able to put his knowledge in great practice, you know. Because Basilio was a guy that got cut in almost every fight, you know, or frequently anyway.
My managers used to work in my corner before him, so I went back and I told my managers that I liked it, and I wanted them to work with me in the corner all the time. We wanted to hire him. I used to get cut quite often in the fight. And Angelo took care of the cut and stopped the bleeding pretty good. And I liked the way he handled it.
Dad's tool and trade initially when he started in the business was fixing cuts. Chicky Ferrara, that's how Dad got in. He could fix everybody's cuts.
That little black bag, if you sold a little black bag, I think it's worth probably $100 million.
Carmen Basilio Ray Robinson fight for the World Championship in 1957 was one of the truly great contests, boxing contests of all time.
It was a rough, tough fight. No one expected me to win the fight.
Carmen Basilio was an excellent fighter. He was much more than people ever made him.
The strategy that Angelo used in that fight was to have Carmen Basilio use his determination and his aggressiveness to nullify the skills of the great Sugar Ray Robinson.
Maybe a couple of times I got cut real bad. If he stopped the bleeding, they could have stopped the fights on me.
It was one of the thrilling nights of my life because here's a little guy, a welterweight champion, fought in Ray Robinson, the greatest boxer of all time, and he beat him. And he legitimately outboxed him. And he won the middleweight championship of the world.
Angelo Dundee came down here about 1952 to join his brother Chris in his promotions.
Angelo came up in the ring. He was a stable figure. He always had that little swat stick over his ear. And he had a towel. That was his thing.
They always shared the office, but they were two separate businesses. Chris was strictly a promoter. Angelo was a manager and trainer.
I mean, I started going every Tuesday night to the fights. It was so good on Tuesday nights here.
I was down there for the boxing nights and paid off the fighters.
The Fifth Street Gym also had a collection of people that I call them the Charity Legion. The gray men, I call them, the professors of the Fifth Street Gym.
So anyway, I'd go to the gym with Ferdy and all the different guys, and Bandini and all those people. We'd go to and Angelo was always like a straight man.
But it was a place where everybody who was anything in boxing had entered there.
It was a landmark. Everyone in boxing, everyone who was a great champion or something, they all had come to the Fifth Street Gym. It was really more famous than the Stillman Gym in New York or the Gleason's Gym in New York. Everyone knew the Fifth Street Gym in Miami Beach.
The Fifth Street Gym was alive. There was a lot of music, there was a lot of noise, a lot of other fighters. I remember Ali and Louis Rodriguez. To walk into that gym and to see it was like going to a carnival or a bazaar with, you know, lots of different nationalities and noise and light, and there was a buzz in there.
They used to charge 50 cents to come in and watch the fighters fight. When Muhammad was there, they charged $1. So who was ever taking care of the gym at that time generally got the revenue because they didn't get paid anything.
So it was 25 cents to get in. 25 cents, and this guy, Chris gave him the 25 cents. You know, Chris said, you pick up 25 cents of everybody that walks in here and you keep it. That's, you know, part of your salary. Angelo used to smoke cigars and leave about that much. And then he would smoke the rest, Sully wouldn't smoke the rest. And anyway, the press people would come, you know, press people are not used to paying anything for anything. Walk in and he'd say, 25 cents. And the guy'd say, I'm the press. He said, yeah, press your pants. Give me, and the guy'd say, press your pants? What does that mean? He says, it means, give me 25 cents or you ain't getting in here. That's what it means. And so after a while, I got to love him.
Well, I grew up, every Saturday and Sunday was my day out with Dad. He went to the gym every Saturday and every Sunday. So whereas most people, like I said, think of it upon as work, Dad's job is not going to work 9 to 5. Dad's going to the playground.
Fifth Street Gym sat above a drugstore. It was ratty beyond belief. It was gloriously ratty. The floor was so ridden with termites, there was a menace that you would fall through it if you stayed in the same place and jumped rope a lot.
Termites eating the discs. You sit there and watch them come out and eat the discs. And the floor, he had to keep reinforcing the floor because underneath was like a drugstore and a lunch counter. And I always said I would never be under there when the fighters were training because I expect any time one of them's going to go through the floor.
And as you're sitting there in the drugstore, you could see the ceiling of the drugstore bouncing up and down as the fighters trained.
I had a lot of fighters. I had about 16 fighters. You know, I was working with Carmen, Louis, Willie Pastrano, Dupas. I used to go to Argentina. I used to go to Cuba like every weekend. I used to bring the fighters to fight the Cubans.
With the Cubans came the greatest fighters who had been around, and Angelo had them all. Angelo took over Luis Manuel Rodriguez, who won the welterweight title. Montequilla Annapolis, who won the welterweight title. And he was a general with first-line troops. I mean, boy, Louis Rodriguez was the best fighting machine you ever saw.
Every fighter I've handled from Cuba were magnificent. 3 world champions, Louis Rodriguez, Ultiminio Ramos, Montequianopolis.
And I can remember sitting in the back room of that filthy Fifth Street gym, sitting there with Muhammad Ali, with Jimmy Ellis, with Willie Pastrana, with all Dad's great fighters, Sugar Ray Leonard, and the gym.
They were looking for it for the movie. One of their site locators called me up, said she's looking all over for the Fifth Street gym. I said, when you find it, let me know, will you? Because I don't know where it is either. I think it's a parking lot now.
Had great, great sadness and despair when they tore it down. I think now it's a drugstore or something, or it's whatever it is. It should have been a national monument. It should have had some sort of plaque. Here was the Fifth Street gym, a requiem for the greats.
A lot of these bricks made the Fifth Street gym. And why the heck they knocked it down beyond me, because to me it was a historical building.
To ask Angelo a question, his answer was my guy. My guy did this, my guy did that, that was just my guy.
Angelo from the 60s on was a premier star of the corner.
Well, you have to go back to the year 1963. It was June 18th of 1963, when then Cassius Clay, who was not yet heavyweight champion, had a fight with a Brit named Henry Cooper.
Ali Cooper is a big story. We made Muhammad the king. We put a crown on him, a robe. We came into the ring with it. Oh, we're getting booed out of the joint. So he's gone 6, Cooper in 6.
Henry was badly cut. In England, he's known as a bleeder. He cut easily, and his eyes were in a terrible state, especially one of them. And then he caught Muhammad with a great hook. I think it was a left hook, and Muhammad went down, hoping this was the end of the fight. The bell went. Muhammad got to his feet, by the way. He got his feet and he staggered to the corner. Then Angelo started to work on him.
He put my guy down. He hit him, and luckily my guy slid on the ropes, and I watched his eyes. He was cockeyed. So he kept going down. He slid down. The bell rings, thank God. I bring him to the corner. I'm cussing him out all the way. I said, Chicky, do something. So I go to the referee. I said, sir, the glove is split.
The story goes, and I have from pretty good resources and sources, that Angelo deliberately cut then Cassius Clay's gloves and showed it to the referee, and the referee said, oh, his gloves are cut. We don't have another pair of gloves except back in the locker room.
He didn't cut it. He made it worse, but he didn't cut it.
Angelo had that very unique quality of being a very, very electric thinker. He thought he could see things and react quickly. He had a lot of speed.
How did I know the glove was split? It was split right from the beginning. I never touched it. It was split in the seam. So when Cooper decks my guy, I put my finger in between the leather and the padding, and I pick it up. And then this way, I call the referee over, say the glove is split. We go get another glove.
He saw that Ali needed time, and so, that's what trainers do. They support you. They are there for you. They know all the tricks of the trade.
But meanwhile, go back to the end of the arena, dressing room, come back, tell the referee, Mr. Dundee, there is no other glove. I said, it's okay, we'll use these. Never took the gloves off. It was just killing time.
I think probably if the bell hadn't gone and the fight had continued, say, another 40, 50 seconds, Henry would have knocked him out because he was dazed. And Muhammad gets up, he can take a great punch. But it's history now, isn't it?
What you got to do, you got to take advantage of situations. You got to know your individual, naturally, because how you going to let a guy get juiced and put out what you want him to put out? Boxing is an intricate profession.
Dad manipulates a corner as special. He screams at the referee. The stool's in place. He talks to the kid. He fixes a cut, and he walks out like he's on a dance floor. Special.
In order to understand the surprise, the significance, and the strangeness of the Liston Ali fight, really takes a lot. It encompasses a lot of things. It's not just a boxing match.
There are several other stops in the career of Cassius Clay and Muhammad Ali where Angelo had a dramatic impact in the actual fight. Of course, February 25th, 1964, against Sonny Liston in possibly at that point, the greatest upset in boxing history.
There was so many years prior to that fight. We did every kind of a gimmick. And we used to go to fights of Sonny Liston, and we used to badger him at fights.
When Ali had his bus, Ali and I drove up to Denver. That Ali wanted me to go out the bus and knock on his door. Now, mind you, Sonny Liston knew that we were coming, so when I went and knocked on the door at 3 o'clock in the morning, knock, 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 he'd peep out the people, "What do you want, you black man?"
I used to see him in Las Vegas. That's where they had when Liston had a toy pistol and shot us. We all went down to the floor, naturally. We didn't know it was a toy pistol.
Let's tell all of the people out there who betting on Sonny that all of them are going to lose their money.
At that time, there's a lot of controversy with Malcolm X and going into the Muslims, and they were afraid that that was going to cut in, be a lot of, the publicity would be bad and cut into the gate.
You know, I don't want any adverse publicity. It was like 2 weeks before the fight. Tell that guy over there, Malcolm X, please leave, because there's a couple, 3 newspaper guys in the gym, and I don't want him to interview him.
I mean, he didn't want to know about a boxer's wedding, marriage, a boxer's sexual proclivities, a boxer's religion. That has nothing to do with Angelo.
I haven't changed the format, Bob. I don't ask him nothing about his personal life. All I worry about is getting him in shape for a fight, and that's been my format for 6 years, and I'm going to keep it that way.
2 weeks before, Muhammad declares he's a Muslim.
Ali was a white hat, and Sonny Liston was a black hat. He was the villain because he was out of jail. He was Blinky Palermo's man, and Blinky was Frankie Carbo's man, and so.
So right away, this cute little kid fighting the ugly bear got to be a mystery. People didn't know what a Muslim was. So right away, they're making my guy a bad guy too. But when you have 2 bad guys fighting each other, you don't draw nothing.
Now Chris, who has been selling $2,000 ringside seats in the era where you couldn't get $200 for it. He had $2,000 ringside seats. They were easy chairs. They were called Caesar's Row or something. And he hears that she's gone the day before into being a Muslim, and he went to the box office and started to OD on tickets. He began to eat the tickets because there was no way you're going to sell anybody a ticket to see a bad guy fight a bad guy. Who cares who won? The selling point of the fight left.
And they were afraid that that was going to cut in, be a lot of, the publicity would be bad and cut into the gate. So he agreed to go into the ring as Cassius Clay, but right after that fight, he became Muhammad Ali.
You've been on this earth a while, you know about the weigh-in and how he exploded. Ali exploded intentionally to make Sonny Liston think he was crazy. We had Sugar Ray Robinson, his idol, with us, and he kept saying, "This is for the big one. This is for the heavyweight championship. This is a very prestigious thing. This is a very honorable thing. Be quiet now. Don't act like a child. Grow up. Act like a man." He said, "Yes, yes, yes." As soon as he got to the door, "Rumble, young man, rumble," and out came him and Boudini doing their act.
Because he was all scary and nervous, you know, with the jungle war chants and everything else.
You know, he was doing his whole act. And I saw Liston turning to his manager. He was saying to his manager, "This guy is out of his mind. He really is." He said he's not all there.
So along comes this fresh kid, looks like a baby, can talk like hell, funny as hell, fast as hell, and nobody gives him a chance. Nobody. 8 people out of 800, and those were mostly guys that just picked the underdog just in case he wins, they look like a genius.
And they still were so down on most of the fight men, you know, picked Liston, and they were really thinking this is just a brash kid who just isn't very good.
Especially since half America wanted him to get beat because he was such a loudmouth and saying so many anti-white things.
Cassius Clay, who was just a kid at the time, was going to be the youngest heavyweight champion in the history of the sport. He was fighting his fight when all of a sudden, in the 4th round, he got some liniment in his eye.
So I pulled him back to the corner. Stay right here, baby. Cut the gloves off. I want to prove to the world there's dirty work before that. I said, in the pig's eye, you can't fight without gloves.
I think it was a drop of the liniment that he was using on his shoulder, which is oil of wintergreen, which burns like hell.
And there were black Muslims in the audience who were telling him that this was a fix. that the white man, the white Angelo Dundee, was deliberately blinding Clay.
If this fight stops and he quits, we're going to get Angelo. Meaning they're going to kill him. They're going to kill Angelo.
One guy was going to stick me with a knife because they figured I blinded the fighter. But I did their brother, and I didn't do nothing. I'm looking to win a fight, for God's sake. And then I wasn't into that, but my brother spotted.
So Jimmy, his brother, was there, and I said, run up and tell Angelo, put the sponge in his face to show that there's nothing in this thing.
I sent Drew Brown across the ring to tell the referee to check the guy's gloves, like I thought there was something on the gloves. And then he went there, and he was such a nervous wreck, the referee didn't even understand him.
So now you got pain and blindness. And Sonny Liston sitting over there dying to kill you. I think everybody in this whole country would have quit there. I mean, I don't want to go out where I can't see a guy that's as big a puncher as he is who wants to kill you because he hates you so bad.
10-second buzzer. So I made Muhammad stand up. I didn't pick him up physically. I said, get up. My instruction was one thing, run. And that's what he did.
That single instant, if he didn't do anything else with Ali, he earned his pay.
He took a pretty good battering by Liston in that next round. But finally, he blinked it through and he got his eyes clear. And from the rest of the fight, after he was able to get his eyes back, he was able to beat Sonny Liston in the 7th round. As TKO was his 7th. He quit, actually, Liston did, after 6th.
But that first Ali Liston fight was Angelo at his best. If Ali hadn't come out for that 5th round, if he had just sat in his stool and he had lost that fight, he never would have gotten the opportunity to fight for the heavyweight championship of the world again.
Ali had a real circus. He had wild people around him, you know, users and takers, and you know, he had, which is fairly well public record, Muhammad Ali had many girlfriends and several wives. He never got into the fray.
Angelo has been the leveling force, you know, with Ali, with the media, with everybody, you know.
But he did have Ali's respect, and he stood out because he was white, you know, and the whole camp was black.
I saw Angelo, I saw Ferdy, and I saw Bundini, and I saw, you know, lots of other guys. Lots of other guys were there who were in the Ali corner.
Muhammad was the star. Muhammad is still the star.
Because there's a guy that gave boxing a new image, where you got to talk to the star, the athlete. He was the guy who was great outside the ring and great in the ring.
We had Soria, black Cuban masseur, who would give you a massage in the corner and could revive a dead man.
Then we had Bundini shouting, you know, flow like a butterfly, sting like a bee, and they'd shout together and all that kind of stuff. It was raucous.
And we had Bundini to holler and scream and carry on. He never did anything any good. I mean, he just, apparently Ali needed some of that vaudeville.
So that was a great cast. And, you know, the conductor in there was Angelo.
Ali and I and his brother would always play jokes on Angelo. And it was fun. You know, Angelo was a lot of fun.
Is the fact that he had 3 heavyweight champions as sparring partners. Jimmy Ellis, Larry Holmes. Look at Larry Holmes, he's huge.
Jimmy Ellis was a middleweight out of Louisville, Kentucky. Same city that Cassius Clay was raised in. In fact, they were buddies as they grew up.
When Ali got thrown out because of the service, the next guy stepping up he would have, which would be Jimmy Ellis.
I managed and trained him.
And Jimmy was like family. Well, all the fighters are like family, but Jimmy was really, really close.
He had the right game plan for the fighter.
Cassius Clay was in exile.
Change the opponents. It's a bit of a hassle, but there's no problem. Jimmy Ellis will fight any heavyweight in the world today.
And pretty soon, at the time when Cassius Clay was banned from boxing, the WBA decided that they were going to have a tournament. Jimmy Ellis won that tournament.
I didn't want the fight. What for? You know what I mean? But the thing was, the TV wanted it. And Herbert Muhammad, the manager of Muhammad, said, Ange, do it.
Angelo had to make a choice between who he wanted to work with. So Muhammad says work with Jimmy.
because he was Jimmy Ellis's manager. And at that time, although he had started out with the manager, Muhammad, when the Muslims took over, he relinquished that part of it, and he was the trainer.
Muhammad said, Ange, do it. I couldn't work against Jimmy. It's not right. I'm his manager. You know, I brought him up from middleweight, you know. I wouldn't feel right.
But he felt it was his duty to work with him and be with him. So that's the only fight that I know of that he was not in Muhammad's corner.
Funny because Angelo said he wanted to run from one corner to the other because he couldn't do it.
Actually, I mean, Angelo, I think, knew the result before the fight anyway. He knew that Muhammad was going to win, and I think he did in about 6 rounds. But he stayed with Jimmy. But that's the kind of guy Angelo is. He does what is right.
Angelo stayed with his fighter. He was loyal. He didn't offer any judgment, no prejudgment of any kind. He stayed loyal to his fighters to the very end, and he was a great trainer.
And then after the fight, you know, I told people the reason Muhammad talked me back is I didn't talk too much.
There were 3 defining fights in the United States in the 20th century. The 3rd defining fight was Muhammad Ali against Joe Frazier.
Well, because Muhammad was just coming back. Muhammad was really just coming back after being gone, you know, for the 3 years.
It was one of the greatest heavyweight fights in history.
But everybody around was at ringside at that fight. That was the biggest fight of all time.
I think Angelo wanted that fight. Everybody around Ali wanted the fight. Would they have been happier if it was a little later? Sure. Don't forget, Ali had been in exile for 3.5 years. Ali and Joe Frazier were each offered $2.5 million, which was an unheard of sum at that time. Ali desperately wanted to regain the heavyweight championship of the world, so they took the fight.
Oh, God, yeah, it was a tremendous sell. I mean, they worked it into a frenzy because you got to remember, Joe Frazier was their champion. New York created Joe Frazier.
In my 40 years in boxing, never did I see anything to resemble the hoopla of the first Ali-Frazier fight.
Joe Frazier, by that time, hated Ali. Early on, Joe had a certain amount of sympathy for Ali. In fact, on a number of occasions, he engaged in some prearranged publicity stunts. Ali painted him in the lead up to Ali Frazier won. He made Joe Frazier an Uncle Tom.
For the fight?
I'm going to Philadelphia today, and you'll read about it. If I can catch hold of Joe Frazier, you'll read about it.
It was really built up to a hate match because Frazier, just everything he said went right to his heart.
We couldn't get out of Madison Square Garden after the weigh-in. There was too many people around there. Joe Frazier could have walked through anything, it wouldn't make any difference. With Muhammad, we couldn't budge. And God forbid they would have found out where we were staying. That would have been worse.
The moment when those fighters left their dressing room and walked down the aisle to the ring might have been the most electric moment in the history of boxing.
People are superstitious in boxing.
Now, he used to wear a white sweater with short sleeves, a white sweater all the time. He never wore with anybody's name on it.
Red sweaters were a really sort of arbitrary thing thrown in by Madison Square Garden. They just decided one would wear green and one would wear red. We didn't care.
I never wore a certain shirt or blouse with a name on it. And what had happened, they had ordered a bunch of stuff from, I forget Everlast, but they come on, Ange, why don't you wear it? It would all look nice. I said, I don't wear that kind of garbage.
Angelo don't have any objection, really, because Angelo has a sort of personal thing where he doesn't wear anybody's sweater. He wears his own white sweater.
The day you need a name on your back, then you're in trouble.
Ali came along dancing. He didn't touch the ground. He was like a ballet dancer. Nobody hit him, and he killed everybody. Then he went off for 3 years. He doesn't wear red at all. He's all white, and he doesn't wear anything on his shoes. And he says, I'm putting red tassels on my... What for? He says, I'm going to impress the judges. When they see him flopping, they'll see how fast I am. I said, how about when you fall on your ass and they're up in the air and they're flying? How about that? He said, I'm not going to get knocked down. I said, you never know. Now, if he danced for one round, he had to sit on his heels for another 2 to get over it. So if you saw him dancing, the next thing you saw was his back's to the ropes and he's holding on like this. He's letting the guy punch him.
That's when he got nailed with that left hook. thing is, you don't stay in the ropes where the guy's a fighting machine like a Joe Frazier. You're better off keeping him in the middle ring, keeping him turning.
When Angelo saw him on the ropes and said, "Don't get on the ropes," he wasn't talking to Ali. He was talking to Cassius Clay. Cassius Clay would not have been on the ropes. Cassius Clay would have been bouncing all over the place, bipping and bopping.
And all of a sudden, in round 15, Joe Frazier throws what might have been the hardest left hook he has ever thrown in his life. That moment was the most satisfying moment of Joe Frazier's life.
And sure enough, he went down. And sure enough, the tassels were flying in the air.
Anything can happen. A punch, that can turn all the fight around.
Hey, you gotta have a winner and a loser. They gave it to Frazier.
And to paraphrase Paul Simon, for every glove that laid them down or cut them till they cried out in their anger and their shame, I am leaving, but the fighter still remains.
The key to Angelo's success, and it's part of Angelo's makeup, and it's the reason he got along so well with Muhammad, is Angelo let Ali be Ali.
He'd around me, or Angelo would holler, "Time," Ali would keep going, you know. He'd shadow box another minute or whatever it was. But Angelo didn't care. Angelo never intervened. But he did have Ali's respect.
As long as it didn't hurt his fighter, he would let him continue doing it.
Well, I think it's common knowledge in the fight game that Angie is a great amateur psychologist.
Angelo does not tell Ali how many miles to run, how many rounds to fight. Angelo tells him things that he sees that Ali does, and he corrects him that way.
In 1974, October 30th, 1974, George Foreman, of course, and Muhammad Ali, in a very similar situation to the Liston fight. Foreman, the heavy favorite. People didn't think that Ali was going to even survive a round.
Frazier fight, but they have about the Foreman fight. When the Foreman fight comes, he'll be the heavyweight champion.
The day before the Ali fight with Foreman, although Ali's strategy was unbeknownst to Dad that he was going to do the rope-a-dope, Dad had loosened the ropes to give Ali more room.
I'd gotten the best of him, but then I'd gotten a little tired, and Muhammad Ali knew I was a little tired, and he started to play around with me. And I had one last punch I knew I could get him with.
The ropes were loose. Everybody claims I loosened them. I didn't loosen them. In fact, we tightened those ropes at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but that fight didn't take place till 4 in the morning. I was scared to death that George Foreman would hit him with a forearm, miss a punch. He wouldn't run out of that rope. That rope was extra high, about 7 foot up, because it was on a mound of a soccer field.
After the boxing match, I was quite certain that Angelo Dundee knew that Muhammad Ali would be laying on the ropes, so he went out and loosened the ropes and made it easier for him to back away from my shots. And you know what? I was glad I thought that, whether it was true or not, because it made him mean so much.
Angelo did some things that now, in retrospect, were genius. He loosened those ropes early in the evening before the fight ever began, and some might suggest that maybe that was illegal or it was a tactic. Whatever he did, he allowed Ali to get George Foreman to punch himself out.
The heat extended. It was a brand new rope, brand new ring, and the hemp stretched. And believe me, then during the fight I had Pat Patterson, I told him, go tighten them. He loosened them. He didn't know how to turn the turnbuckles.
The mystery about the ropes and Angelo tightening the rope, it remained a mystery to me, and something I really felt he had done, because it added to the mystique of this man's brilliance.
The rest is history. Foreman was defeated in the 8th round of the KO in one of the greatest, one of the greatest upsets in history.
But I had the pleasure and honor of meeting Muhammad Ali prior to him fighting, I believe it was Ken Norton. He looked at me, he said, "Son," he put his hand on my shoulder. He said, "If you ever decide to turn professional, make sure you get the best man in your corner, Angelo Dundee."
I knew Ray Leonard. Why? Because he lit up the screen. He was the perfect foil for a Howard Cosell. He sold the Olympics. Everybody knew who those fighters were. So it was an instant sell. And Leonard, to me, lit up the screen more than anybody. What he did, so you got to have that charismatic approach to be a fighter. Not only you got to be able to fight, but you got to look the part, and Sugar Ray Leonard looked the part. It was perfect sell, home cooking, different sell than Muhammad. See, every fighter's a different sell, different approach. And Ray was the home cooking kind.
And I took it to heart because I knew that Ali was so successful and Ali had the right corner, and I wanted to emulate Muhammad Ali as I've done for so many years, that I took his advice.
Angelo saw in Leonard a fighter with extraordinary speed and a great ability to turn a fight his way, like Ali.
That's why I said, I don't know what division he's going to be champion of, but he's going to be champion. I started him off nice and easy and slow. I got abused for the guys he was fighting, but meanwhile, it was a format for him to gradually learn to be a professional.
Also another great quality of Angelo. He let me be me, and but all he would do is add on or enhance it.
Sugar Ray Leonard came to Angelo, hat in hand, please, please, please mention. Remember, Angelo was number uno at the time. He made Ali. He did everything that you had to do to make a fighter great. And he'd taken on what I really hate in boxing, wise guy lawyers who come in to do your law work and end up being your manager.
And the fight against Tommy Hearns in '81, September of '81, the fact that you're blowing a kid, you're blowing it, made all the difference in the world.
In Leonard's 10th fight, it was proposed that he fight a kid by the name of Tommy Hearns out of Detroit. And so one day I get a call from Angelo and he says, Hank, he says, you ever hear of a guy by the name of Tommy Hearns? I says, the guy's an assassin.
Angelo and I went to see Tommy Hearns, check Tommy Hearns out prior to me fighting him. And Tommy was fighting Pino Cuevas.
The other guy's very important. He may not gel with what you want to do. Your fighter's got to fight the fight to beat that guy.
Tommy annihilated Pino Cuevas. He just destroyed him.
He was a knockout artist. He flattened everybody that came to Detroit.
That when Tommy knocked out his opponent, I recall Angelo and I looked at each other. We kind of read the same thoughts. And but I still believed in my heart that I could beat Tommy Hearns. There was a way. I knew I could beat him.
In the Hearns fight, it was the fight. There was never any bigger fight outside of Ali Frazier.
That fight there generated so much money. And the reason it did that was because it was a fight that the boxing fans wanted.
Tommy Hearns is huge up here. And he lost too much weight. He came in weak, had no legs. Well, certainly Angelo didn't know that. I didn't know that. And Sugar Ray didn't know that. We expect this big guy that's always walked in there walloping away.
The fight against Tommy Hearns was one of the most difficult fights that I've ever experienced.
It looked very bad for Ray Leonard going into the 12th round.
And as the rounds went by, I recall sitting down around the 12th round, and Angelo saying, "You're blowing it, son. You're blowing it."
You only got 9 minutes. You're blowing it now, son. You're blowing it. Angelo, okay, put the ices back.
If you don't win these next few rounds, it's over. If you don't knock him out, it's over. You lost.
When he got in the corner, he could bring them out to their greatness.
To understand what you're doing wrong, and to understand what's going to help you win. And Angelo Dundee was the best communicator of that advice.
He was just weakening by every round. He was getting weaker and slower and weaker. And nobody saw it except Angelo did. So now you have to step it up. You're young, you got energy, you're not tired. He's dead.
He really went after Tommy Hearns. He knocked him out. And I'm not sure Ray would have understood the urgency of the situation and done what he had to do without Angelo's motivation.
The universal opinion was that Hearns would knock Leonard out. But Angie stuck through it. He said it on the press and interviews. He said, no, my guy is going to knock him out. Of course, he was right.
Sugar Ray Leonard owed Angelo the victory over Tommy Hearns. Angelo won that.
With Sugar Ray Leonard and Marvin Hagler, because they tried to push that fight down him Oh, long time before it had it. In fact, one time Angelo was out of town with the fight, and they were trying to put that fight on, and I called him long distance. I said, they're trying to put this fight on. He said, no way. When he thought he was ready for Hagler, then he fought Hagler.
Well, the general consensus felt that I couldn't win, and rightfully so. I think that being out of the ring for a 5-year layoff, that type of inactivity, you don't come back and fight a guy like Marvin Hagler. You just don't do that. It's not healthy, it's not safe, it makes no sense.
And he's fighting the most savage middleweight champion, the most impenetrable, devastating puncher the division probably had ever known.
My career was cut short. I retired when I was 25, back in 1982, for medical reasons. My greatest goal was to fight Marvin Hagler.
Talking about money, you talk about Fort Knox.
I first told my people, my trainers and everyone, I said, I'm fighting Marvin Hagler. And everyone gave me a strange look. But I can say this, that Angelo believed that I could win.
He wants them to be somebody. If they want it, he wants it worse.
So I had to come from what I lived for 5 years as a civilian to become a fighter, which is a whole different transformation. It's a whole different person. And I trained for a year for that fight, a solid year. I did everything necessary to beat Marvin Hagler.
And, you know, it's the last place you expect it in the public restroom, not even in the back in the training area or in the locker room. He's in the public restroom. And he's got his clothes on, it says Angelo Dundee. And I was the most shocked guy in the world to see this. I said, Angelo, what are you doing here? You should be pacing the floors of the locker room right now. This is the biggest fight, and your guy is a heavy underdog. He said, no problem, kid. We got this one wrapped up. How's your family?
Hagler was not a southpaw. He wasn't this way. He was actually right-handed fighting southpaw. So his strength was on the right side. It was not here. So I had my guy fight him like a conventional fighter.
He was out on his feet, and I'll never forget it. He said, you got 3 minutes left. You got 3 minutes left. You got it. You got to do it. Can you give me 3 more minutes? Just 3 more minutes.
Angelo is the quintessential optimist, always has been, always will be, because Angelo has never gone into the ring with a fighter where he didn't know the fighter was going to win.
He had Ray Leonard winning that fight before the bell even started for the final round.
Angelo Dundee says the right things at the right time. But Marvin Hagler hurt him with an uppercut. And Angelo Dundee said, Ray, if you stand there, don't stand there. Move, box, don't stay against the ropes. And even though he's not hitting you, it looks as though he's hitting you from a judge's perspective.
And Angelo wasn't as bombastic as Ali was, but he was every bit as confident. Trust me on that one. And when he said, we'll win it, he believed, just like Ali, that he would win it.
And the reason I got out, because I was told that I wasn't too much input, and I sort of took the wind out of my sails. I looked in the mirror and I said to myself, what are you? You're a man, you're a mouse. Take a walk. And I took a quiet walk, because when everybody comes up to me saying, what you do for Ray Leonard? Well, it speaks for itself. What did I do? I created a talent.
Because people may forget that Angelo was with George at the very end, at 44 years old, that when he stopped Michael Moore at that age, that too was one of the most unbelievable surprises in the sport's history.
Finding Angelo was like finding a gem. I wanted to work with Angelo. I think it was in 1968. I had the first opportunity to speak with Angelo about working with him. Of course, he had Jimmy Ellis. He was training for the world title, and he was kind of busy, so I worked with Dick Sadler.
And I got this telephone call from this guy who wants to talk to Angelo. Well, at the time, I don't remember what was going on, but I screened the calls. We get a lot of crazies that do call up. So I sort of screened the calls, and I kept saying, he says, I have to talk to him. And I said, well, just tell me who you are. I want to surprise him. I said, well, you tell me, and I won't tell him. And this went on, and I finally said, there's some nut on the phone. And I hung up on him. And pretty soon he called back. He says, you know, you just cost me for another toll call on the telephone. He was here, but he was on his way to the islands. So he says, okay. He said, I want to surprise him. This is George Foreman.
And lo and behold, it was him. I said, what can I do for you? You know, I finally spoke to him. What can I do for you? He says, I want you to work with me.
I knew then that I wanted Angelo Dundee to be my trainer. I was angry with him for a lot of years. I mean, I had deep anger for Angelo Dundee. because I was that close to getting Ali with that shot. He was playing around with me, and Angelo saved him by saying, "Don't play with that sucker." And I never got that chance again.
If a voice can affect a big man like that, I want him with me. So that's how I was with him, and it's a true story.
But now he was ready to take on some challengers, and he wanted Angelo to work with him because he says that he felt that Angelo was the best corner man that there was.
My first fight to work with me was against Evander Holyfield, 12-round decision I lost. And I think it was very important that I had him in my corner for that boxing match because he paced me through 12 rounds. Remember, I'd been out of boxing all those years, and most people thought I couldn't do it. I'm getting ready to fight for the heavyweight championship of the world. I'm 45 years old, the oldest man to ever get a chance to do something like that. And Angelo, the same way he presented himself to me in 1991 when I was 41, the same way I knew him when I was under 41, even in my 20s, he'd never changed the way he looks at you with, "You can do it."
And I think he was a better fighter after he came back. Preaching and eating, I don't know which one he did better, but he was better when he came back than when he was a young kid.
For the first time, though, he crossed that line. It must have been about the 9th round. I went back to my corner to cool off, and he said, "Look, I think you're behind on points, and you may have to do something." I got upset. "You can't tell me, don't bother with me in the ring like this." He said, "But you know, George," and I said, and he got me so upset. The next round, I went out and knocked Michael Moore out. He knew what he was doing, and for what reason he was doing it. He is the most, what do you call a man like that who's such a thinker? I mean, he's the intellectual of boxing.
Yeah, I was with him when he knocked out Moore. A lot of fun. You know, I was with him when he fought Holyfield. Didn't win that one. It was a great fight, though.
It speaks in volume about Angelo Dundee. Muhammad Ali had beaten me 20 years earlier in Zaire, Africa. He was the chief corner man then. Now, I'm fighting Michael Moore 20 years later in Las Vegas, Nevada, and there he is in charge once more. The only voice that I'm going to pay some attention to.
In Zaire, I was getting ready to nail this Muhammad with a heck of a right hand. And I heard a shrill voice in the corner, "Get the hell out of there." I missed that punch, he said. If I'd have hit him with that right hand, I may have won that fight.
And Angelo was great. Great. I mean, I'm telling you, great. I look at all the old guys, and I've seen them all work, and I've evaluated them. There was nobody like Angelo around.
Angelo Dundee was a master motivator, and that will make him a legend.
It's said that you really have to beware of a truly great fighter because he might always have one more great night left in him. And I suspect the same is true of Angelo, that we might very well see Angelo work his magic in the corner in a crucial fight, in a key situation, and people just will look on and wonder and say, "Yeah, that's Angelo. He still has it."
Johnny Holman, heavyweight, was sent down to me to be retired. So he came down to me, and I gave him a new moniker, Big John. He said, "Ange, I want to get a house with air conditioning and shutters." So I got him 3 or 4 wins. Ezra Charles decides to come down for a warm-up fight. He's getting the head kicked out of him about the 4th, 5th round. I say, "Hey, John, what are you doing? Guy's taking your house from you, your shutters and your air conditioning. What are you doing?" So he went out. Lo and behold, he stopped Ezra Charles. He got so imbued, the man's taking his house from him. He went out and stopped Ezra Charles.